I'm Bryan. I'm Vice President and National Education Officer at Renaissance, and I'm here to talk to you a little bit about big data becoming small, jagged data that make a difference. There was an article that came out in 2016 about big data to be the answer to fix American schools. And the article goes on to say that big data are valuable. What we can mine from this information is important. But if we're going to look at schools and use of data in schools, we need to dig deeply and start looking at very small pieces of data. For example, we've got IQ scores. You could have two young women who have an IQ score of, let's say, 103. They have identical IQ scores. But if we break down the specific attributes that led to that IQ score, you will find that these two women are completely different in their command of knowledge and ways to analyze information. Author Todd Rose, who wrote The End of Average, calls this jagged data. So when you have a data set, you want to start looking for the jagged edges, the very specific attribute that tells you how children learn and leads you to breakthrough ideas on what you can do in education. For an example, let's talk about reading. PISA publishes quite a bit of reading data, and it talks about the amount of reading time that children spend daily, and the greater the amount of engaged reading time, the higher their achievement. That's a big piece of data. But then when PISA started making this very small data and looking for jagged edges, they looked for the socioeconomic jagged edge. And they found that students from low socioeconomic backgrounds, if they were deeply engaged in reading daily, achieved as well as and surpassed their peers from the highest socioeconomic standard with less engaged time in reading. That's a jagged edge. How much do you read? There's a breakthrough idea. If we have students reading more each day in school, their achievement will rise. You could look at data another way. As children read, they begin vocabulary. For every 1,000 words you read, about 2% will be unfamiliar to you. And then you'll learn on your own, just through the act of reading, about 20% of those words. So the more students are engaged in reading, the more they're building their vocabulary. Well, why is that such a big deal? Vygotsky writes that words are the social means of thought. The only way to explain what you're thinking is to talk about it. And the richer your vocabulary, the richer the depth of your conversations. Vygotsky said a word isn't a word, it's a tool. It's a functional tool for conceptual development. So there's another piece of jagged data. The more you read, the more vocabulary. The greater your vocabulary, the greater your chance for expressing your thought and being heard and being known. So big data offers schools brilliant opportunities for information. But the trick is to drill down and find those jagged edges in the data, those tiny little pieces of small data that will lead you to a specific attribute and a breakthrough idea.